Hey everyone, welcome to The Path of Me. I'm your host, Wendy Hutchinson, and I have the lovely Melissa Bonnette in the house today. She's a yoga teacher, also a French teacher for a private school, and she has just been through this incredible transformation, which I've been on the sidelines watching, and I'm like, I gotta get her on my show so we can talk about all this juicy stuff. So welcome, Melissa. Thank you for being here with me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I know, I'm so excited to have you. So you are a Texas born and bred woman. You're born in the Woodlands to a family of, you have three siblings, right? So family of six. What was it like growing up in your family?
I'm the oldest. So I have three younger siblings, and growing up, we had a very interesting dynamic. It was always 3-on-1 or 2-on-2, or depending on how many of us there were at the time. Like when there were three of us, it was 2-on-1 constantly, or 1-on-1-on-1. And so we had a very kind of close, but also I would call it like an aggressive dynamic growing up, because it was always.
I like that. You guys had an aggressive. Tell me a little bit more about that.
We used to we would play all the time, but it was like the play wrestling and playing like kids used to before like all the Game Boys and all that. Like, it makes me sound like I'm really old. I'm only 33, but but it's just we played a lot of games. We played a lot of imaginary things. We rode bikes outside. I remember in elementary school how sometimes during the summer, my mom would be so tired of all of us, because my dad worked full time. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And when there was four of us in the house, and the three of us that were older, she would have a race to go to the mailbox. She'd lock the door behind us and tell us go play. And then she'd unlock the door for dinner.
You had an old school upbringing, because I remember that too when I was a kid, and I'm a lot older than you. My grandma she'd watch us after school, and you could come in for water or to use the bathroom. That was it. And you stayed outside until you were called in.
So it sounds very different, you know?
That was back before we had screen time.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I think that's really kind of like the big deal. We weren't allowed to really watch TV. It would be like, we might get to watch like a show or two, but then my mom would turn the TV off and tell us, go play, go do something. So get off your butt would really be what she.
So what was your role in your family? Because I know we all kind of assume these roles, right? Like someone's the funny one, someone's like the black sheep, somebody's the bossy one. You know, there's always like these roles that we kind of.
I think you've nailed some of the few. Like growing up was called bossy all the time. I would call that leadership now.
Right.
I was trained for a leadership role.
It's leadership.
It is semantics, and bossy is really only applied to women specifically. And so it's a very like kind of like pejorative term and very kind of misogynistic. So, but I was bossy. I would tell people what to do. It was like, let's do it this way. Let's go do this. Let's
like in charge. I
was in charge. I was the eldest. So it was one of those like, well, let's go do something. Okay, Melissa's in charge. Melissa babysits. Melissa, you're 10 now, so you can have like, you can go mow the yard. That's your present, is like, you get to learn how to do this. But it was, so I would call myself the guinea pig, really. Like, it's what worked, what didn't work. There was a lot of things that changed for my siblings.
Well, by the time the fourth one comes along, they're like, and whatever, if she's breathing or he's breathing, we're good. They've got a pulse, all good.
So in my family, it goes girl, boy. And me and my brother, John, who's the one right after me, were really close kind of growing up. And then my sister, Jacqueline, joined the dynamic, and she's 4 years younger than I am. And we didn't get along until she had graduated from college, really.
Wow.
So it was, it's not that we fought or that we just had not enough space, is really what it comes down to. Is I had a great time. She has a very different memory of growing up with me than I do of her. Mostly because I was the antagonist, and
well, you were a lot older, so you were in charge, and then
she received all the things I thought were funny.
Some people resist authority. Mm-hmm. I certainly did when I was a kid. I drove my mom absolutely bonkers, because I have a really strong persona. Mm-hmm. So I came in really firm in who I was. And I took any kind of parenting as some sort of slight, like, don't tell me what to, like, I was being controlled instead of parented. It's probably now called good parenting. But when I was a kid, I'm like, don't tell me what to do, you know. So I can imagine only how challenging I was raised.
I personally, I don't recall being a bad child, or like I would do my chores, like I would talk back a little bit, but I had a lot of respect for my parents, so it wasn't so much like a me on them or any kind of that. It was just, I remember chaos in like a good way. growing up was chaotic. That's kind of, it's transmitted into a lot of like who I am as a grown up. I enjoy chaos, which is a very interesting thing. Like, cause it's like for a lot of teachers and a lot of yoga teachers, it's about bringing order and everything. And I like to make order out of chaos, but also when things are chaotic, I feel at home. So it's not something that I find completely and totally off-putting, which in 2020 and 2021 has been
awfully quiet. That's the opposite, right? I mean, there might be inner chaos, but
yeah.
but it's also quiet because you're teaching from home. What's
Right.
that been like, you know, having to transition from in a classroom full of kids all day long to just online and you're at home, basically?
It's been different. So obviously, so I taught in public school for about 9 years and 3/4 before we went virtual. And public school, like the job of a teacher has changed so much in the 10 years that I taught in public school. It went from teaching my content to really being more administrative, and instead of teaching directly, being more of a facilitator for learning. And that part's neat because then I get to be more hands off with the kids, and the kids get to take more control of what they're learning, how they're learning, and make it their own. But the last like 2-3 months of last year was really difficult because we were just kind of thrown into teaching online. And a good bit of my stuff was already online, but it was a big change for the students and for the relationship with the students and teacher. And that was actually my last year in public school. So I, this year have transitioned to private school, and I'm very, very, very happy and very lucky and blessed to be where I'm at, because this year we did the first about 4 or 5 weeks virtually. And then since we're private and we're small, all of our kids have come back. And so I've been teaching in person since the week after Labor Day.
Boy, that must feel so good. You must feel like you have some sort of normalcy, and also more, there's something about connecting in person. I've noticed that I really miss the, I was telling my husband today, I really miss just seeing people's faces.
I think
everybody's covered, you know, when you go out.
It's sad. There was, whenever we were virtual, kids didn't have to wear a mask because they're all at home, and we're on a one-to-one campus. And so every student has a computer that they use. And so everyone was able to log in and to attend class, and you got to see their faces. And so you kind of like, I got to recognize my students. And once we went to in person, they're all wearing masks. And when we have lunch or whenever they have a drink and they take their mask off or put it back before they put it back on, it's always surprising to me what they look like. I'm like, oh, I forgot what you looked like. I forgot you.
What?
I forgot you have your face doesn't look like what I imagined it to, even though I know what your face looked like. And so it's just, that's been interesting. But in my own personal life and personal struggles, like November was a very difficult time for me in 2020. And I remember during Thanksgiving break, there was 1 or 2 days where I realized I didn't talk to anybody. I had gone out and I had done some shopping and I had done some things, but the only person I talked to the whole day and had a conversation with was about a duvet cover.
Oh my gosh.
That was it. And so
that's just a huge, kind of a huge realization. And let's kind of transition back to why that was such a difficult time for you. But I know that it was 2019?
2019, yeah.
2019. You were pregnant with your first child. And I'm just going to let you kind of share your story from there.
It was an unplanned pregnancy. I had a copper IUD and I had had it for about 5 years. And so it was, it should have been fine because the copper IUDs are good for up to a decade or even longer, depending on who your OBGYN is and what they have to say. And I felt very confident with it. I was in a brand new relationship with a man, and I ended up getting pregnant. And had actually decided I was going to end the relationship right before I found out that I was pregnant. And
oh my gosh, are you serious?
It was the night that I took a pregnancy test and it came out positive was the same night I had kind of decided I can't do this anymore.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
So it was not well, I was scared to be pregnant, first of all. It was something that I had not planned for. I didn't know what I was going to do. I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment and I have 2 dogs and 2 cats and this boyfriend that I don't really want. I don't really feel a connection with and don't feel like I'm going anywhere with it. And suddenly I realized it might be my hormones. I might just be crazy. So we'll stick this out and see what happens. And I, once I got my pregnancy confirmed with my OB and my OBGYN, it was a whirlwind of don't do this, don't do that, don't pick up anything more than 5 pounds. I had been on a weight loss journey that starting in February of 2019, and I had lost a little bit of weight. My goal was to really kind of get fit and grow some muscle, and I had to stop that. And so I couldn't really do yoga. I couldn't ride my bike. I couldn't really go, I could go on walks, but I wasn't supposed to go on long walks. And so all these things that normally I use as an energy outlet were no longer there. And
it's like a huge test for you because obviously you're going through a lot of physiological changes, but also emotional changes. And not to have that, how did you manage yourself, your feelings, everything?
It was so scary. I reached out to some of my friends, and I had a friend who was actually pregnant at the same time. Our due dates were 2 days apart in March, and we started hanging out on a more regular basis. I sought more support from some close friends at school, and it was a lot of there was a lot of fear because having the IUD, I didn't find out until I was almost 9 weeks pregnant, and so at that point in time, most doctors aren't like if they're going to do anything with the IUD, they do it before the end of the first trimester. And I couldn't get into a high risk OB until I was 13 weeks. So I had to keep the IUD. And I have a cousin who was an IUD baby from the 80s, and it was all fine. And so it was just hoping and praying for the best. A lot of it was prayer. A lot of it was just hoping for the best, learning my body, and then just trying to do the best that I possibly could. And that was not easy. And
what's really tough is, especially when you have something so precious to you and so, I don't know, when you have something that's just priceless that you're focused on, and then you feel like there's something that could harm it in some way, or that must have been such a difficult place. And being a first time, parent, first pregnancy, it must have created so much anxiety for you.
It really did. I had never really dealt with anxiety prior to my pregnancy, and it showed up like a long lost friend, or like a half sibling that I didn't know about that just gonna kind of move in with me. And it was overwhelming at times. I call myself sometimes like a control freak in recovery. I think a lot of that comes from trying to create order out of chaos, and kind of just letting chaos happen. But in that sense, I held on to anything and everything that I could control. And so I was very controlling about the content that I covered at school and trying to do my best to whatever I could, have some control over. I was trying to alleviate my anxiety by.
I think it's so common, and control is a byproduct of fear. Control and fear go together like peanut butter and jelly. They're just inseparable. So the deeper the fear, the more we try to control. And then it's almost like we can't help ourselves. And I can say it because I've been in that kind of space, not in the same circumstances, but with my kids. So I can totally understand this need and to translate it into other areas of your life, right?
Yeah, it was just hard. And there were the IUD would move around. And so that was ultimately the problem that caused my miscarriage to happen right at 21 weeks. Oh. So it was awful is really kind of, that's the only way to describe it. A miscarriage at any time is awful. At 21 weeks, whenever I got to the hospital, the doctors told me if you go into active labor, there's nothing we can do. He's going to be too little. We knew at that point in time, he was a little boy. He would be too little. They had nothing that they could do. And so when I went into labor and I had him about 6:20 in the morning on October 22nd, he lived about almost an hour. And that was really, really neat to be with him. And I had an unmedicated birth. And so I got to feel all of it, and it hurt. But I'm so glad that I got to experience that, and that while he was still here and I could hold him, that we were both lucid, which was a blessing.
Yeah. Every moment counted under those circumstances, right? Just to be able to be really present with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's lucky in a way that he only knew love. Mm-hmm. And he was held his whole life. He never knew anything that was bad. Mm-hmm. No fear, no hunger, no pain. He got to have the best part of everything, be surrounded by people who loved him, mm-hmm. and to eventually to fade. He didn't hurt. Mm-hmm. That was what was really important.
It was a gift, right?
It really was. It really was. And as terrible as it was, in a way, it was a blessing. Had he survived at 21 weeks, or even prior to 26 weeks, he would have been blind. He would have had mental handicaps. He would have had issues walking. And I'm so glad that he does not have that. And that's not to say that children that are born handicapped are less than by any means. I would have loved to have him, but to know that he won't have any pain associated.
He would have had so much adversity. I think he would have had so much adversity to overcome.
I would have been concerned about him at school. I would have been concerned about him while I was working. It would have been a constant fear and anxiety. And ultimately, he had two parents that didn't really love each other in the way that they should have. And so that would have been something else that would have been very, very difficult.
That would have been a really complicated dynamic. And it's just so interesting how, you've done so much inner work mm-hmm. from that point on. It's like everything changed. Something was triggered inside of you and through your healing, I think, that really, really has created the woman you are today. There was something so powerful about that experience. And I want to ask you, how do you take something that's so devastating and difficult and hold and walk through and navigate the darkness?
That's a really good question. I'm still figuring it out. But immediately what I did was I was able to rely on my family. My parents still live in the Woodlands area. I live in Houston. So they were about 45 minutes away. So I spent 2 weeks living with them. My partner at the time also came and stayed with my parents' house. He was originally from Chicago. And so his family couldn't come down immediately. And I relied a lot on my faith. I grew up with a mom who's a very strong Christian, and we had gone to church every Sunday, and I was lapsed. I hadn't been to church in a very long time, and being pregnant kind of brought me back to that. And then afterwards, I just leaned heavily on hope. Mm-hmm. It was this, I learned in my yoga trainings that you be in the present moment, that in order to process feelings, you have to feel them, which, it's awful. It's awful to feel all the negative feelings. And if you feel like the lowest of the low, if you really let yourself feel those lows, you feel that you can feel the opposite. And so as terrible and as awful as I felt, I know that I experienced such extreme, ecstatic joy holding him, seeing him, and that it's possible. And so it's this kind of weird kind of zigzag or back and forth. That
feels like it's kind of like a wave.
It is.
You're kind of, you're on the ocean, and you're just mm-hmm. feeling the rise and fall of the waves and the currents, mm-hmm. and you're going deep, and then you're coming back up, and then you're going deep. Would that be kind of an accurate?
It would be. What I've also heard is there's a ball in the box. And so imagine that there's this box, and there's a button inside the box, and the button is your grief button. It's your sad button. It's whatever, it's your anger button. It's whatever it is. And the ball initially, like as it bounces around inside the box, initially will probably hit the button a lot. And that's exactly what happened. I was crying all the time. I would wake up with salt crystallized on my eyelashes because because I would cry myself to sleep, and then I would cry when I woke up, and I would wake up regularly in the middle of the night. And so it was just like, ugh. I'd never experienced that to the point like where it's like I had to use eye drops regularly throughout the day because my eyes were just so dry.
It must have been surprising to you, that endless well of tears. Like, wow. It's just so deep.
It was, and I would say it felt biblical, like, and that's it come back to the whole Christianity thing. Like, it felt biblical. I never understood like the gnashing of teeth and the pulling out of your hair. And I get it now. Like I picked at, like, for me, it was crying. I was picking at certain things, but I can understand like the pulling out of your hair, the crying, the screaming, just.
It almost has to happen that way, I think, so that you can, because you're releasing such deep emotional pain.
It's how it felt. And I knew based off of my previous experiences, whenever I was younger, I was bossy. I was told I was mean growing up as a kid, and that I was like, I had to be nice. I was always the mean one. And so when I was in college, it was just like, I have to be nice. I have to be nice. I have to be amenable. I have to do all these things to be what everyone else wants me to be instead of being, I guess, who I am. And I had built up these walls like around my heart and around myself that no one could really get into. And unless I really, really, really let them, or they somehow got in, and no one got in. And so I was so alone and so lonely.
So you were like Fort Knox. You were armored up, girl.
Oh, I was armored up. I had a guided meditation where everyone else that was in my yoga training there was like, imagine you're in this field and you look around you and this is all the things that you see. And I just saw like I was inside of a bricked up tower. And everyone else went on a walk through the woods. I never made it outside of the tower. I could look up and see the stars, and that was it. So, and that's when I realized I might have potentially blocked myself off from
there may be a small issue here, but
that might be the cause of all of my loneliness and problems with connection with some of my students at school and coworkers, and that might actually be the root cause of some of my problems.
What a huge revelation. Meditation is such an incredible tool because through that connection with ourselves, we really find out so much about ourselves, just creating that space.
There's so much of ourselves, like it's almost like a closet, and like you just if you look into the closet without the lights on, you see the things that the light shines on, but you don't see everything. And suddenly, like, meditation is like turning the light on and you see the thing that you were looking for, or that you didn't know, you forgot that you had. And that to me was that wall. And so from that in 2015, like taking it to 2019, I realized to go through my grief, I can't hold on to, I don't want to hold on to the sadness. I know being in the present moment is really important. And the thing is about the present is that the present is now, and how I feel now is not how I will feel in the future. This is not permanent. Nothing in life is permanent. That's happiness, that's ecstasy, that's joy, that's sadness and sorrow and grief and anger and frustration. It's money. It's everything. It's about relationships with people. Everything is temporary. And so it's this feeling of non-permanence. And so I held on to that. That was my hope. That was my life raft of I am sad now. I'm going to put in the work now because I need it now. It's something to focus on. And so I immediately after I had my son, like I did pump. I pumped breast milk for about a month, and I donated it to the breast milk donations, like in Austin, that they give breast milk to ICU baby or NICU babies and babies that are still in the hospital and that need it and can't necessarily take formula or other things. And so that for me was really, really rewarding.
That's so beautiful that you found that opportunity, because it allowed you to kind of have the experience of sharing something beautiful and giving back while you were processing what you were processing.
It was my son's gift. My mom was the one that actually told me about it and that you could donate breast milk. I had no idea prior to that. And I found it a very, very healing experience. I used that. I didn't do a night pump or night feeding. And so because I didn't want fully engorged breasts full of breast milk. because I didn't want to do it for forever. I wanted to do it for as long as I could without it really altering my lifestyle, because I didn't want to be the sad miscarriage mom who was still pumping milk and donating it. That was just not something that I wanted to do. I wanted to essentially be almost like a role model and to myself more than anyone else, and to like, look, you can do this. You can do the hard things. And this is a really hard thing that is also, it gives back, and volunteering is a big thing for me, but it was giving back what my son gave to me. And then I had signed up for a perinatal yoga training with, it was Poppy perinatal yoga training with Kat Allen. And I was supposed to be 27 weeks pregnant whenever I went to that in early December. And I ended up being about almost 7 weeks postpartum at that point in time. And it was an eye-opening experience, because I felt so validated in what I heard about the processes of going through labor and about the changes that happen in a woman's body when she's pregnant, because the people that I relied to and that I trusted here in Houston to guide me in yoga as my teachers had no idea. They were ultimately they were clueless, and I was trying to figure things out on my own and sharing what I learned. And so it was really nice to find someone that was knowledgeable in that space, and it just clarified and opened up where I was at. And so I constantly allowed myself to completely and totally fall apart, to fall apart and go back to the foundation of who I am and who I want to be and what I want to be. And I looked at changing jobs. I looked at becoming a lactation consultant or a doula or a nurse practitioner or a physical therapist or an occupational therapist, and all these things that kind of go along with, I specifically wanted to work with moms. And because moms will take care of babies. Everyone loves babies, but it's moms in the postpartum period that really need the help, because ultimately their body will take care of their child. And so will all the love that they have and the other support that they have in their household with them. Mm-hmm. And so that to me was really healing, falling apart. And then I did a doula training with To Labor. And I did that in January, about a year ago. And that also, same thing, understanding all the different transitions of labor that I personally experienced. I felt the nausea. I felt the part where I was like, I have to go to the bathroom right now. And realizing now those are shifts in labor, in the labor process that a woman experiences when she's giving birth. Like that, it just made me feel like my body knows what it's doing. My body has the capacity, it has the skills, it has things that, and it knows how to do things that I don't know how to do. So as far as my heart goes, that's going to be an open wound for a very long time. I can carry it, I can hold it, and I'm not going to keep it safe from every single little thing, because that's also how I've connected to a lot of other women. Mm-hmm. It's brought me closer to my own parents.
And yourself, ultimately.
Yeah, and ultimately it's brought me to a space where I've broken down so many times because of it. And whenever it happens, I know I'm building up stronger than I was before. And so it's hard and the work is hard, but after I feel it, I feel so much better rather than just carrying it with me. And that, because it's heavy. It's dealing with any
so heavy. But I think what's so beautiful is through your yoga training, mm-hmm. really had a lot of tools at your disposal. Can you imagine someone who's bubbling along in life and has never done any sort of reflection or inner work having to deal with something as major as what you went through and not really have any sort of tools like yoga, meditation, mindfulness, self-awareness. Mm-hmm. It's so difficult to navigate life and the challenges that life throws at us without something in our toolbox. And that something is, the tool that's going to help you be guided to the right things, trusting your intuition, connection with your heart, knowing yourself, because we go through so much trying to be everything to everyone. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people out there who really have lost touch with who they are in their core being. And what I've loved about you, Melissa, watching your journey is everything you do is so authentic. You are so beautifully, authentically you, and I love that. You're so authentic about sharing your journey. You're so authentic in sharing the lows and the highs, which we talked about. And people who follow you are able to, especially as a yoga student. Melissa was my yoga teacher for 2 years. I religiously went to her classes, but there's something really powerful when someone can be really authentic and vulnerable and not just show you the glossy Facebook social media side. And I just love that about you. So I'm so grateful that you were able to really tap in and allow yourself to feel and process every layer of that morning journey.
And it's hard is the thing. And I recognize that I've been blessed that I went through my life and realized, oh, I built up these walls, or, oh, I was given these tools that I didn't know that I was going to need later. And so I just put them in my toolbox. And I went through all these different yoga trainings between 2015 and 2019 that every one of them gave me something different. And I applied all of it in the last year, especially dealing with grief for the 6 months prior to COVID. And then once COVID happened, to deal with a relationship that was falling apart. And my partner had moved in with me after we lost our son. And it was a very traumatic, I guess it was about 7 months that we still lived together afterwards. And it was not a happy time.
It's gotta be challenging when you weren't in sync to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go through something so powerful together.
Mm-hmm.
And then a loss so powerful together. And then you both are trying to process your grief and be in a relationship. That must have been so difficult.
It was. And part of, I didn't really share this with a lot of people, and anyone who listens to this, I guess, will now know it. Part of my healing process was also reading scientific journals. I read a lot of medical journals about miscarriage. If you have questions, please reach out to me, I guess, in social media. But I read about how often miscarriages happen in all the different weeks of pregnancy, how after a miscarriage, how long before you should try again, how like what happens to your body after about when does your chance of having a miscarriage go back up again? Because about the first 6 months after you've had a miscarriage, your likelihood of having one is less than normal. Because for whatever reason, I'm not a medical doctor. I have no medical training, so please don't quote me on that.
Full disclosure.
That made me feel better, because I wanted to have a baby so bad at that point in time that I told myself, you'll have a baby this next year. So that was part of my coping mechanism was, okay, you need to hear that you're going to be a mom. You need to hear this. And so I allowed myself to tell myself, you can have a baby. We'll try in January. We'll try in February. My partner at that point in time was not ready. He's the man that he didn't have any tools. So the person that you're talking about going through grief and not having any tools, that was him. I tried to share them, but I'm readily accepting of any kind of tools or advice that someone else
people aren't in a space to receive it.
I think he was hurting in a way that he was not at a point where he could receive.
Yeah. And also I think when you are someone who's done a lot of self-work and inner healing on your journey, and then you're trying to partner with somebody who has not, that partner will often project a lot of their stuff because they can't hold it. So they're going to keep projecting their issues and their stuff on you to make you feel like you're the problem.
There was a lot of that. There was a lot of miscommunications, and there was a lot of projecting. And whenever I did tell him I wanted to have another baby, it did not sync well with him. And at that point in time, it was part of my healing process to just tell myself, you can be a mom, because I didn't know prior to being pregnant that I ever wanted to be a mother. I take that back. I wanted to be a mom, but I didn't know that it would happen. And so I had kind of come to terms with it might not happen, and I'm okay with that. And so
then it did happen.
And then it did happen. And now it has to happen again. I have to be a mom. That's what I had decided. I have to be a mom. And so I'm now, like, I feel like a mom of sorts to several of my students at school, and just.
Well, the beautiful thing is you have this opportunity to really nurture your students. And I know a lot of teachers just really fall in love with their students, and the whole process of being watching their growth throughout the year is probably such a beautiful thing.
It really is. And it was hard. It was hard to go back to teaching and realizing I'm teaching other people's children. That to me was really hard. I teach high school. So these children are 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And I struggled to go to work every day because I was looking at people's successful children, is the way I said it at that point in time. And that's not a healthy way to look at it.
What's really challenging is being so mindful of how we're perceiving our reality, because our perceptions can really color how we show up in the world, how we filter information coming in from outside sources, whether it's family, friends, work, students. Our perceptions can really color our world, and they can really lift us, and they can really weigh us down and drown us.
It's perspective is everything, because it's that whole, the glass half full, half empty, or is the glass even exist? So we get to choose our perspective. We get to make our choices. And I had decided I'm not going to be a victim. I'm not going to be a victim of my son's death. Like, my son is going to be a reason for me to live a full life, and for me to live the best life possible, versus allowing myself to just settle. And I've already peaked, and this thing was terrible, and it's going to define my existence. And while it's very, very, like, core to my heart, it doesn't define who I am. The miscarriage,
what's incredible is that you've made this choice, and so you are really walking in such a creative space. You're just completely alchemizing that energy. Basically, you're basically taking something that was so heavy and so difficult to bear, and slowly I always call it like spinning dust into gold. Every time you peel another layer off, every time you make a choice that supports you or supports your future and your vision, you're alchemizing and shifting the energy of that, right? Because energy is always constant. I'm all about energy, right? So energy is always constant. So it's always constant, but we get to decide what form we're going to take with it, or what direction we're going to channel it. And congratulations, you became a homeowner. During this time. And I think that's incredible. How did that come about?
It just like all the other major things in my life, it was an accident. I have made so many plans in my life, and one of my recent Instagram posts was about this, and I actually got a lot of feedback from people about how they had similar plans, or how it made them feel about, like, the fact that, I had a plan too, and I haven't kind of kept up with it. My life plan, let me just really give you a quick rundown. When I was in college, and I graduated college when I was 21, and my plan was, I'm going to graduate, and then guess what? I'm going to get a master's degree by the time I'm 24. I'm going to have a PhD by the time I'm 26 or 28. I forget which one. I think I'd put 28. And then I'm going to get married at 27. I'm going to have my first baby at 30. I'm going to have several kids. I wanted 4. And then I'm going to be done by the time I'm 35, 36. I didn't have anything planned after that.
I'm impressed that you had planned that far out. Like, that's, you had your whole life figured out.
That was my vision. Like, growing up, I never wanted to be a teacher. I never wanted to be a fireman or a dog or anything like that little kids say they want to be. I want to be a mom. That was the thing. So I fell into my major. My senior year of high school, I took an art history class and fell in love with it, and ended up being my major in college once I changed it, because I missed the subject. And I ended up with a teaching job in French, because my AP class in high school, I took the test, I passed it with a 3. I was very proud of my 3. And they gave me so many college credit hours that would be stupid to not do a minor. When I was looking for jobs, I wanted to be a social studies teacher, and I couldn't get a job teaching social studies in Texas because I'm not a coach. And so I took a French teaching job. So I got a master's degree in French so I could be more competent at what I was doing. And then it was just kind of like all of these major decisions have kind of been accidents. And with
COVID, the accidents?
Very, very fortunate accidents. The way I chose my university was I went, my mom and I had gotten in an argument. I decided I was going to go to UT and I didn't get in. I got capped. I went to UTSA just kind of like in a fit of anger. Like I said I was going to. And then my boyfriend, my freshman year of college, actually went to U of H. And so I decided to go to U of H because like so we could be together forever. And then we broke up before I ever got the chance to transfer over there, but I still did. So it's just been like
Melissa, it's like your entire life has been an opportunity to surrender, right? It's been like a lesson in surrender. Like the universe is like, no, actually, Melissa,
we've got this other idea.
Shelve them because that's not how it's going to play out. Well, just let us handle the details.
That's how I've gotten my jobs in the past. That's how I fell into yoga. That's how I described it as falling. I fall into things. Like I felt like I accidentally got pregnant. I had done everything that I thought was possible to prevent it other than abstaining. And, it's just like the job I have right now. The only reason I have it at this private school is because I have a friend that I knew from football games back whenever I used to go to the college football games. I know her from that. And so she's like, hey, we have this French position open. And I actually knew the former French teacher. And so I knew people at this job. And so I got this job that I did not look for. It found me. And I felt like the same way about the house. When COVID happened, I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment with my 2 dogs, my 2 cats, and my boyfriend at the time. And it was too much space, or too many people, not enough space. It was 740 square feet. And all of my normal things to do, like the yoga studios had closed down. So there was no escaping the small space. It was, you work from home.
Right.
We work from home. We live at home.
That's a lot of time at home together.
It ultimately, it accelerated a process that was already happening. And I'm thankful for that we didn't prolong everything. It was a very, on my part, it was a quick and dirty kind of like into break. But I can't imagine, I'm so thankful that it wasn't prolonged. And I had kind of thought about like, well, because of COVID, I want to have an office. I want to have a yoga room. I want to have a this and a that. And I started looking at apartments, and in Houston, luxury apartments are everywhere and they're so expensive. And I looked at that and looked at my bank account and I said, I don't really want to do that. And I just kind of looked at houses on a whim and realized I could pay less on a mortgage note than I would monthly living in a 1-bedroom apartment. Right. And so I seriously looked at it and said, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, I'll live in an apartment for another year or two and figure things out and see where
so incredible. I can tell by the picture behind you what a lovely place you found. It was the perfect place for you. I love that. I love how life just kind of keeps flowing. Like, and I want to say, I believe 100% it's because you keep aligning with your truth. And we were talking a little bit before we started recording about how, you just kind of start shedding and releasing things that don't really align with you. And it really does accelerate your life. Because like that hot air balloon analogy, right? You cut that ballast every time you cut that person or that job or that mindset or whatever, you just keep cutting all those sandbags and you just go higher, and then the universe just delivers those things right in alignment. Right.
I think it's also what you can see. Whenever you're still closer to ground, you can't really see a lot. You can't see very far. So there's not a lot of space that you have. And the higher up you go, or the more you release the sand, the more the higher you go, the bigger the space that you have. And so I have a lot of things going on, and I'm very leery about cutting ties with like, and using that terminology sometimes, because there's a lot that I see on Instagram about cut this, cut that, they're toxic, do this, whenever the work needs to be done with the self instead of with other people. And so there's a lot of projecting. And so for myself, it's the higher I go, the more space I have. And the more space I have to be reactionary with myself or proactive, however it happens for that specific occasion. And it doesn't affect anyone else, because it can happen just within myself. And then I can come back together. But it also gives me the space to hold for other people. there are a lot of other people, everyone's going through their own trauma, especially.
Everyone is going through a lot, especially being home. A lot of people are processing things privately. They're not out in public really that much. And
Exactly.
I think a lot of people are going through a tremendous amount of releasing and awareness of their truth. I think being home with yourself or your family or your spouse or your partner or your children 24/7, there's going to be a lot of truth that starts to rise.
Yes. And it's having the space to hear and to receive someone else's words or feelings or actions, and not be reactionary to that, is also really, really nice. So when
Detachment is really a powerful tool, like being able to really observe it and have compassion for that other person. And then maybe you're not going to be so quick to respond, because you can kind of see, well, okay, that person's got a lot going on in their life, and maybe that's why they're projecting or responding in this interaction in this way. You get a little more tolerance, I think, when you have detachment.
I think, I think for sure. And also that it gives you space to listen and to hear. What I've in the last few weeks have been really difficult for me. I've been dealing with a lot of anxiety and seasonal depression, and it's worse because of COVID and being separate from things. And the relationship that I'm currently in is also in a very interesting spot that I didn't think that would happen. So without going into it, and it's been nice to have that kind of space, and to have to be able to look at things and not be attached to words, to be able to listen without giving advice, and to be present to what someone else is feeling. Because I personally, whenever I talk to my friends about things that are going on in my life, I'm not looking for advice. I have so many conversations with myself about what's the best way to do this, or, oh, that you sound crazy right now. Let's go ahead and get the crazy out of your system. So tell me the rest of it. And it's part of it is that whole, yeah, you can have a baby, you can do this. And then realizing oh, wait, time out. Maybe this is not the best time, but realizing for my whole body, my whole self, to kind of come to that, we actually don't want to have a baby with this man, or we don't actually want to have a baby right now. This is not a good time. Instead of being actually, you shouldn't do that right now, because that's just going to put a damper on everything. And for myself personally, that will slow down my healing. And so having that kind of space to say crazy things to myself, and then to it also gives me the space to hear the crazy things that sometimes come out of other people's mouths that could be pointed or pointy or pokey, or just kind of get to me. And they don't, because I realize, oh, okay, you're not looking for advice. You're not looking for an explanation. You're telling me how you feel. And that's not a reaction to myself. That's how you're letting me know. It's information.
I think that's such an important thing, because I think all of us have been in situations where we internalize something that someone is, we internalize something someone is saying to us, or an exchange we're having with someone, and it's really not about us at all.
No, I highly recommend the book, The 4 Agreements. And
I love that book.
It's so good. I have it posted up in my room. It's actually, you can't really see it, but it's right there on that wall, right behind me. And it's so nice to don't take anything personally. No one is reacting. No one is doing anything specifically to get at you. It's a reaction of themselves. It's coming from themselves. It tells you about them. It doesn't tell you about yourself at all. And that to me is been really empowering, because I realize, oh, when someone says something, that's how they feel. That's information about them that I suddenly have, and I can choose how I react. I can choose whether to be upset about it. I can choose to listen to it. I can oftentimes, being a teacher, and a lot of the changes in teaching over the last decade have also been going from really kind of punishing and doing giving kids homework, or giving kids a punishment if they do something wrong, or sending them to the principal's office. It's a lot of talking and dialogue and almost like coaching. And so
sometimes when you create space for that, you uncover so much more, and then there's more compassion. There's something hard going on at home for them, or there's
a lot of times it's acting out. It's acting out. It's adults act out, children act out, and sometimes it's verbal. And so when people say things that they intend to be hurtful, you don't have to take it as hurtful words. It tells you that person is really hurt.
Well, it usually tells me the level of their suffering.
Exactly. It gives you information about where they're at. And so having that space, just like as you let things go that are no longer serving you, and as you choose the right path, and as you realign and kind of recognize who you are at that moment in time, which is, you're not perfect either. You know, that's the thing I always think about, is you're not perfect. You are still growing. You're still learning. You're better than you were yesterday, hopefully, but sometimes you're not. And so being in a state of grace and holding that space for other people when they are also dealing with the same kind of things that I'm dealing with, and like essentially extending grace.
I think extending grace and being in a state of grace yourself can really, really help so many people, and you don't even realize you're helping them. You don't do it intentionally, but I think when you can approach our relationships with that state of grace and just offer a little bit of kindness, a little bit more tolerance, it really goes a long way, even if it's for someone, a stranger, you know, at the grocery store, or somebody, letting someone go in front of you when you're driving, or there's so many ways we can show up in a state of grace. And I really feel that it just makes us better human beings. And and we do it for ourselves. We're not doing it for recognition, right?
No,
you're just doing it to,
I call it listening with your mouth shut.
good advice.
Because it's when someone comes to you with a problem, unless they specifically ask, what would you do? Like, what do you think I should do? They're not asking for advice. They're asking for you to be compassionate, to hold space, to listen. For me, it's whenever I share that what I'm going through with my friends, I'm lessening my load. And it's not that I want someone else to carry it. It's just, if I give you a little bit, then I don't have to carry it all myself. And that's
huge,
so
right?
important. Oh yeah.
That's huge, right? I want to ask you a little bit about this huge, you've done so much emotionally in terms of your transformation, but you've also been completely changing your body. So tell me about that journey. That's incredible.
That's part of that. It goes back to being the best version of myself for my son. I decided in 2018 that I wanted to kind of like at the end of 2018, I'm like, I finally think I want to do something about the fact that like I was chubby, I felt, and like I didn't like the way my clothes felt. I didn't like the way I felt in my own body or the way I looked in pictures. And I always idolized women that had muscles. Like I really liked defined arms. Like it was one of those things that in yoga magazines, you see like these women doing these beautiful poses, and I could do the pose, but it didn't look like that. And
it wasn't the glamour shot.
It was not the glamour shot. And a lot of that has to do with lighting. I'm realizing it's lighting, it's posing, it's drawing it's sucking in your belly. It's doing all the little tips and tricks. And I was being, I guess, let's go with too authentic in how I was portraying my body. But I finally decided I needed help and I needed a coach. And because I couldn't do it by myself, I had, prior to getting an IUD, I had an Nexplanon, which is an arm implant, and it's a hormonal birth control. And I gained 30 pounds on it without changing anything about my lifestyle.
Wow.
I looked more pregnant with the Nexplanon than which I was never pregnant than I did when I was 21 weeks pregnant. And so, yeah, it was a huge, big thing. Like I actually had traveled to Europe while I still had that weight on, and someone had blessed me and my unborn child, and I wasn't pregnant, and said, I'm going to put this in my blessings bank, and then one day I'm going to use it. So, but I was chubby, and I had dealt with kind of like Weight Watchers. I had joined CrossFit gyms. I had done all these things, and I had joined yoga initially because I was going to lose weight. I was going to do this. I was going to do that. And yoga is a great way to create length in your muscles and to create some strength, but it's not going to help you to lose weight in the way that I wanted. And
was it a nutrition coach or like a fitness coach, or what kind of?
She's a bikini like fitness competitor. And so, but that also did coaching on the side. And so I had followed her on Instagram for a while, and I really liked her content because she shared a lot of things about how to look at what you're eating, how to actually lose weight. And while I hadn't applied any of that knowledge, I just really liked how body positive she was. And she would share information about her clients and about how they were successful. And so I joined with her in 2019, and I ended up I was with her for about 4 or 5 months before I got pregnant. I had to stop everything while I was pregnant, but then I joined we started pick things back up in early January 2020. And so I worked intensely with her, and we worked with counting macros. And so I looked at what I was eating, and in terms of like carbs, fiber, which fiber is a type of carb, and then fat and proteins, and kind of changing instead of just looking at a calorie as the number of, this is the amount of calories I can have. It's I need to make I have these goals within that ultimate caloric goal about, this is how much protein, this is how much fat, and this is how much, like how many carbohydrates I need every day. And then I started lifting. I did her lifting regimens that she had given me, and I was adding cardio. And so it was just something to do it was every day as far as tracking what I was eating. And for me, it's that making order out of chaos, which is the theme of my life. And she just kind of fell into my like discover page. And that's how I found her in the first place. And so it's one of these, right place, right time, right person. And we worked really well together for, I guess it was a year and a half almost.
Wow.
And it was really nice. So we started in early 2019. I finished with her in the summer of 2020. And I ended up losing about 20 pounds with her. And I switched to a different coach. It's DLD Nation. And it's Dayla Loves Dumbbells as her Instagram handle. And she's very progressive about the way
What's her name? What is it?
I think it's either Dayla or Dala. I want to call it Dala, but I think it's Dayla. Dayla Loves Dumbbells. But she has this group that's called DLD Nation. She has several coaches that works for her. She's essentially like a small business owner. She lives in Austin. I've never met her. I did all my coaching online, to be very clear and upfront. I'm a kind of person that I don't need someone to stand over me and tell me what to do, because that makes me really resentful. And I being a teacher and being like a leader and all that, I also resent other people who kind of step in, and I'm a bit of an anarchist in that sense. Like I'm like, I want to create and sow a chaos where someone.
I liked you for a reason. There's something in common there. I don't like to be told.
I don't like to be told what to do. And whenever I do have someone telling me what to do, or I'm not doing it well enough, I will sow as much chaos as I possibly can. Right. And that's one of those destructive things I recognize about myself. And so when I notice I start to do that, I'm like, well, we need to step back, because this is toxic for everybody. And
so you sound like you found the right person at the right time again.
I did. I found, and I had changed my goals from I want to lose weight to I want to grow muscle. And so working with my new coach was really nice, because then I started seeing all these changes in my body.
You really transformed your body. It's been incredible. Like, yeah, it's inspiring.
I've lost postpartum. At my heaviest was 192 pounds. I am currently about 164. And so some of that was the initial weight of giving birth and a placenta, and the extra blood volume that you have whenever you're 1.5 humans. But a lot of it was that I did not eat very well while I was pregnant. I made a lot of cheese plates. I would in the morning make a cheese plate. I bought a cheese cutter specifically because I was making so many of them that
you loved your cheese.
I love cheese and grapes and apples. Like I was a bowl that was half fruit and half cheese, and I loved it. But also I gained weight because of it. And so some of it was like I just needed to get rid of it. I just wanted to be the best version of myself. It
sounded like you really got intentional about the life you were creating for yourself, in your mindset, in your diet,
and
relationships.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like going through this process has given you a new clarity.
That's very accurate. It's been clarifying. It's been there's been a lot of clarifying and trial by fire, it feels like, but it's figuring out through trial and error that doesn't work. Nope, you gave this a good try. You gave it several tries.
The difference is, Melissa, the difference is you actually recognize it and then do something else. There's a lot of people who go, well, this isn't going to work, but I'm going to hold on to this boyfriend for 10 more years because eventually it will.
Exactly. And there are a few things, like there's some quotes. It's like you get, doing the same thing like over and over again and expecting different results is the definition of insanity. That was Einstein. Or comparison is a thief of joy. That's Teddy Roosevelt. Like all those things that you can sit there and be miserable and just kind of think about it, but you have to actually do something if you want things to be different. You have to do something different.
You have to make the choice that's more aligned for you.
Exactly. And sometimes it's not the choice you want. It's not as easy as you want to make it. It's not as immediate as you want to make it either. looking at pictures of myself a year ago, I am very, very, very different. I don't see the changes from day to day. I have to take progress pictures. I have to look at myself. I go back and I read my old Instagram posts and go, oh, wow, you were really feeling some things. And it's the looking back and kind of seeing where I was. And that was so progressive. And it was so much better than I was, 2 years before that, or 5 years before that, when I was growing up. Like, I'm so much more self-aware. And at the same time, I'm not done. And so I know that
we're never done. It's a constant evolution. I mean, that's
when we're done in bed,
right? It's just a constant process of shifting and changing. And we were talking before we got on this call and started recording, and we were saying how there's so many dead versions of us behind us, stacked, just bodies everywhere of our old selves that we had to kind of,
and I'm appreciative for every single one of them, because every time I killed that version of myself, I'm a better person because of it.
Yes.
I shouldn't say I'm always a better person. I'm a different person because
she got us here, right? All those versions of us, they got us here to where we need to be right here, right now.
And I personally believe that I'm always in the right spot at the right time with the right people. And so even if I show up late, I'm supposed to be late. If I'm early, oh, wow, this is really nice. It's really convenient. But it's people, I believe that people show up and they're present as long as they need to be. And when they leave, they leave. And it's one of those things that for me in my life, my son showed up at a time where I really needed that the clarity of focus, and I needed to redefine my path, because as much as I had decided I was going to do this fitness thing, I was unhappy with my job. I was unhappy kind of in my personal life. It was one thing after another where I was like, I'm okay here, but I needed that focus. And so my son showed up when I needed it most. And then he gave me a reason to continue to change things and to move forward. And he'll be my forever motivation.
Well, I feel like it's just, he completely unlocked something inside of you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's the way I would define motherhood, in to the extent that I experienced it, was it's kind of like that. It's the closet thing. So it's like opening up a door and not being able to see what's inside. And that's what I lived like before. Like I could see whatever the light touched, and that was it. But I don't I don't know what all's in there. I don't know who is in there. I don't know what all I have in store. And for me, motherhood turned that light on. And so I suddenly see all these different things. For me, it was like, it's a lot of baby stuff. I'm like, I want to do the baby thing. I want to be around children. I want to do all these things. I want to work with them. I want to work with mothers. I want to do all these things, and things that I didn't know that I wanted to do. And to a certain extent, I didn't even know existed. I didn't know about lactation consultants.
Yeah, this whole world was opened up to you, right?
It was. I didn't know what a doula really did. And now I do. And I'm very happily working on my doula certification and finishing it.
That's so cool. I was wondering if you were going to continue pursuing that or not, because you've got such a play.
COVID has definitely put a damper on it. I finished my training, and I did it last year about this point in time. And then February was like a really busy month. It was a very chaotic month in the relationship that I was in at that time. And then in March, spring break happened, and I was like, okay, we're finally we're going to get on this. We're going to do this thing. And then COVID, and with the COVID regulations, no one could be with the mother that was in delivery.
Right.
And so,
well, that makes sense, right? Safety requirements. Yeah.
And so
it'll happen right on time, like everything else in your life.
That's why I'm not worried about it. I wasn't really in a place I thought I was, looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, no, maybe I shouldn't have. It's been very, very, very triggering.
It's funny. We always have these ideas about what we're able to take on and where we're at. And sometimes it's a blessing when it doesn't actually work out.
Very much so. It's in the last weekend was very difficult for me. I found out that several of my friends who already had 2 or 3, they have 2 children at home there, but they announced that they're having their third, and which is so exciting. I think that's such an exciting thing for a family to have. And I have other friends that said that they announced their very first pregnancy, and they were so far along, and it was very, very similar to my experience. And I was triggered in a way that I thought I was past, because I have so many friends that have had babies this last year, because when you're in the early to mid 30s, everyone suddenly is having babies all the time. Maybe not all the time, but they're everywhere. They're constant pregnancy announcements.
I think part of it too is we don't realize how many layers of healing are required for
Mhm.
each issue. Like we think we've navigated and cleared this and put this to rest, and then boom, there it is again. And then you work through that level, and then you're like, okay, I've finally put this to rest. And then 6 months later, there it is again. You're like, what is
the
this
button in the
about?
box? Like that ball initially hits the button a lot, and then it gets less
It's
and less
hitting the button a lot, right?
It hit the button this last weekend, and it put me in a weird space because I sat with it. I proctored the PSAT on Tuesday, and I sat with it, and I was just thinking, like, why is this getting to me? Because I've dealt with many pregnancy announcements. I've seen, and I'm happy for my friends. It's not, but it's a sad thing for me. And I realized I have baby fever. That's what this is. Oh, because baby fever for me, instead of it being like this, I just need to hold a baby, and then that'll be enough. It's a baby fever that's tinged with grief and a little bit of guilt about feeling baby fever, even though my baby is not here. And like feeling that way that
it's so much, it's so many things, right? And it's all
things that are all layered
and convoluted and kind of like this overtangle of everything, right? That you're trying to dissect and pull apart and recognize. But what I love about you is your self-awareness. Your self-awareness has been such a gift, because we can't heal what we don't know or aren't aware of. And so I love that you are able to really sit with it and be so present within yourself and go, actually, oh, it's this. You can actually pull it apart. And then I think sometimes when we have an issue that's really triggering or really painful, if we can kind of separate it out into those separate pieces, we can work on each one, and it's not so overwhelming. We can kind of look at it separately and break it down, you know.
I think you're right. It's breaking it down to manageable pieces. It's like a project that you're given at school, and you have this big project with this big ultimate final like work of whatever it's supposed to be, but you don't just start working on a big project, you work on a part of it. Or if it's a group project, you divide it up and you break it down into manageable pieces. And big feelings and grief and like terrible things that we don't really want to deal with, or like how to look at the things that are going on inside of ourselves and our heart and our soul, it's looking at it for what it is and realizing, okay, this is sadness, or it's for me, it was a little bit of resentment, and it's like, and jealousy, like, what exactly are you jealous about? I'm like, oh, well, I'm jealous that my friend is my same age, but she has 3 children, and from the outside, a very happy marriage. And she's got this job, and her husband's at a job, and they go on vacations. They have the life that I thought I wanted. And I am grateful. I don't have the things that I initially thought I wanted. I'm glad I'm not married to the man that I was dating whenever I was planning on getting married at 27.
Right.
That would have been terrible. That would have been a very
there might not have been a happy ending there.
No, and if I had 4 kids with that man, it's who's to know how long that relationship would have lasted, because it didn't last until I was 27. Like it ended when I was 23.
That we get what we need, and it comes right on time, and there's a level of surrender and trust that it is just going to work out when it's meant to, you know. And until then, you just keep evolving and expanding and growing yourself. And another thing I've really found is when you are in a space where you can be the best version of yourself, you will attract the partner that is resonant and going to meet you there. If you keep growing and you settle for someone down here, there's going to be problems, because the gap is going to keep widening. If you keep growing and the person isn't in training and coming with you, that's a problem, you know.
And ultimately, if I had followed that life path, I would not have done my yoga training. I would not have done a doula training.
You would be a different person. You wouldn't be the person you are today, right?
Yeah, I would. I really kind of feel like I would be the typical suburban mom. Like, and I say that being like, I look at that's depicted on TV, frustrated, probably. Like, and just like everything is for my children. And while I don't think that's the wrong thing to do, it's not the right thing. That
I think you lose yourself in that process too.
Right.
I certainly did as a mom.
I know I'll be a much better mother, having gone through all these things, having taught for.
You're going to be in a much better place, and you'll be ready when the time is right. Now, I always ask my guests this, because we're kind of running out of time. But what do you think your greatest tool was when you were in the dark and feeling so alone, because I know so many people are kind of going through that right now.
Hope. Like as it's that one word, but it's the there's a quote from Dumbledore in the Harry Potter series. Like it's, it's, I guess hope can be found, or it's like, I'm going to misquote it, but light can be found even like in the darkest spaces. All you have to remember to do is turn on the light. And it's knowing that hope, hope means that you trust the process, and that you're not always going to be there, that things are not going to be the same. And as terrible as it might feel, it's temporary. Because if you have hope, there's that hope for something better. It's that you can trust the process and understand that things might not be okay. They might not be how you envision them. They might not be how you expect them to be, but you're going to make it.
For sure. That is so beautiful. Thank you so much, Melissa, for those beautiful words of wisdom, for being so vulnerable and sharing your journey with all of us. You're so inspiring. I have to get back in your yoga class. I have to come back.
Please do.
Reminding me I need to get back. But thank you. And to my audience, thank you all for tuning in today. Be kind to yourselves. This is a really challenging time for so many people. And as Melissa said, hold on to that hope, because that light will always help you find your way in the dark. We'll see y'all later. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thanks, Wendy.